What's up, guys? I'm Joe. Today I'm talking about the new Primus album, the Desaturating Seven. So Primus are back with their 9th studio album. Some decent hype going around behind this one because it is the first album of all original material since 1995 with the original lineup of the band. I believe the drummer did come back for the Willy Wonka cover album that they did. But, this is the first album with original material, with the full lineup, in quite a long time. So there's definitely a lot of excitement behind this one. Overall, I gotta say, I found it to be pretty underwhelming. I don't think it quite lives up to that hype of what you would expect. Not that I necessarily expected them to mimic their 90s albums. I think there's nothing wrong with, the sound of this album, which I'll kind of get into explaining that a little bit. I just think it just doesn't feel like a full album. It kind of feels like just a sort of extended EP. It is a concept album. It's based off of this children's book, The Rainbow Goblins, which is perfectly aligned with Les Claypool's kind of odd sensibilities, And again, I think the music is pretty good. There's definitely a progressive element going on here. It's drawing a lot of comparisons to Rush. Think along the lines of Hemispheres or 2112, those sort of elongated, long, opera-like songs. That's what this kind of seems like here, and I think that's why it kind of feels incomplete to me as an album. This feels like the Hemispheres of this album, and you think there would be more songs to follow. It does come in at almost 35 minutes, which would be long for just one song. But I think, if you cut out the intro and the outro, which are just kind of there taking up space, they don't really do much for me music-wise or anything. The first track, The Valley, after a sort of narration, gets into this kind of overextended, long intro build-up kind of thing. It's sort of atmospheric, very eerie sounding, but I think it just sort of overstays its welcome here. The same can be said about the outro track, The Ends, which, is just kind of there. It kind of takes up space. So if you were to cut those out already, you're getting more into the 2112 Hemispheres territory as far as time goes. So it feels like this could have been an opening track, like an epic sort of opening track for, what would be at least a couple more songs to fill out the album. Which is sort of disappointing because I think musically this album is pretty good. I like the progressive nature of the tracks here. The Seven is an interesting song. At first I was kind of wary of it, hearing the beginning. It kind of sounds like the Willy Wonka covers had rubbed off a little bit too much on them, but then it just cascades into this great, very progressive, almost jazzy kind of beat. And just, the bass lines by Les Claypool on here are just as great as ever. A lot of intricacies going on there. Same can be said about the Trek. I think that's a really great track. I like the build and kind of, it builds up, it comes back down, it builds up again. Lots of cool, atmospheric sort of bass lines going around in the beginning. And then, ultimately it leads into this really cool riff. It has a nice drive to it, a nice sort of bounce to it as well. And ultimately towards the end you get this nice little bass solo from Les Claypool, and then, it really just explodes at the end. So that's overall a really great track. The scheme as well, that seems like, what would be just a smaller, shorter section of this much longer track. I kind of just see this as one long, winding thing. This is a song that, doesn't overstay its welcome in any way. It doesn't feel like it's being pushed for time like some of these are. Again, really funky, gritty bass lines coming through here. And what could be said about quite a lot of songs on here, you have the very, classic Primus sounding guitar lines as far as these dissonant things that just play atop the bass lines. That's always something I really thought was interesting about Primus. How the bass gets to take the lead for the most part, and the guitar is accenting it in very interesting and oftentimes unusual ways. And you get plenty of that on here as well. The Dream as a song is much like the intro and the outro songs. It feels like it's just taking up time here to make this track an album length, Very atmospheric throughout for a very long time, and the song doesn't really pick up until about 5 minutes in. And then when it does, it's really cool. So I kind of wish that, that had been cut down, got to the, the meat of the track itself a little faster, and then it would overall just fit well into the grand scheme of the full album or the full track. The Storm by far is the big standout track for me on here. I love that it comes right towards the end. You've kind of built your way up to what becomes a very progressive, very intricate track. This one does not overstay its welcome. I don't think there's any time wasted here. You get those atmospheric elements that have kind of been going on throughout, but you also get some very, intricate bass lines and drumming and guitars. And I think this is where the Rush comparisons are really coming into full form here. Ultimately, I like how it just takes you through very different levels and different modes of the song. And yeah, like I said, overall, very progressive, psychedelic at times. As weird as Primus, is usually, and overall just makes for a really great track. So for me, the Storm, the Trek, the Seven are some of the saving graces here. Otherwise, like I said, my problem with this is it just doesn't feel like a full album to me. I think you could cut out that intro and outro and then some of the extended areas of these songs, and it would be like the beginning Hemispheres 2112 type song to what would ultimately be a few more tracks to fill out an album. That's how I feel about it. Like I said, by no means is it bad. I just think it's underwhelming because I do really like what is, the good parts of this album I really enjoy. So I would have liked to have seen that fleshed out a lot more. I don't think it's bad by any means. Like I said, those musical aspects that I like a lot. So I'm going to give this a 3 out of 5. Let me know what you think in the comments. So thanks again, guys. Don't forget to subscribe. Plenty of other reviews on the channel to check out, and more on the way, because there's a lot of new albums coming out. So yeah, thanks again, and I'll see you guys next time.